Hello again. This is episode 3 of my mother's diaries. March 1948. March opened with sunlight. On Monday the 1st, the weather was beautiful and all the washing dried by lunchtime. A small triumph after the long damp of winter. It was such a lovely day that I decided to go for a walk with Heather in her pram over to Flexford. It was a long walk down the farm drive, up the Hursley Road and left at the Badgerley Crossroads. I posted a letter there on the corner and walked along past the cricket field on the left, down the hill, over Monk's Brook Bridge and past the Hatley sawmills on the right. Up the hill and over the railway bridge past Richardson's Bridge House on the left and the farm cottages on the right, where our cowman Bill Wren lives, and then on the right, just before Mr. and Mrs. Trenfield House, into the Flexford yard, where we had picked all the snowdrops last month. But now there are beautiful daffodils in abundance. Heather seemed to enjoy the walk, although she had a bad cold, poor little thing. It was a lovely walk with no traffic and just the country sounds and the birds singing to keep us company, and we picked a lovely bunch of daffodils to take home. When I got back, Mother rang in the evening and said that Father was much the same without any change. The early days of the month passed in ordinary farm rhythms. Some snowdrop plants were carefully transplanted from Flexford Yard to the bank behind the house, and Clara, our goose, laid her very first egg. Cows were milked every day, of course, and water delivered for us in churns every day by the milk lorry. At last Mr. South and Mr. Harvey, the local builders, came to discuss the troublesome kitchen beam which kept catching fire. Not sure when they can start work. Then a travelling salesman from McLeod's called at the door, a regular visit every month, and John bought himself a new suit from him, and I bought 3 stolen towels to turn into 2 tea cloths. John and Leslie went to the Bar End farm sale in Winchester to look at some farm equipment, but did not buy anything, and I wanted to go with them to see Father, but I couldn't go because I had caught Heather's cold, heavy cold, and thought it best to stay away for a day or so. Later in the week, I did at last find time to see Father. But he spoke very little, yet he seemed free from pain, which is like a mercy. Saturday the 6th came wrapped in dense morning fog, but that cleared by noon, and Leslie left us to return to his own farm in Devon. We were sad to see him go, as he'd been such good company for us, but we wished him luck and good fortune in his new venture. On Sunday, John worked in the vegetable garden, while I prepared a corner of the woodshed for Lassie, our sheepdog's coming confinement. That evening I telephoned Beechcroft. Father was still the same in hospital. By Monday the 8th I started the spring cleaning in earnest. Rooms were emptied, curtains washed, and everything turned about, and it was keeping me really busy all day. I went to the hospital one day with Mother. Father looked terrible. We both wondered how much longer do we think he can last. The next day the telephone rang with news from the hospital. Father was very bad indeed. And, would you believe it, that day was the hottest March day ever on record. Some days of waiting followed, but I tried to keep busy spring cleaning. Doug, Marjorie, West and Malcolm popped in for a visit, and John and I went into Winchester shopping. Of course the cows were being milked and the little chicks were growing apace. John was also busy with spring planting corn and potatoes at Flexford, while the weather stayed wonderfully bright and warm. It's as though the world itself did not yet know what was coming. Then, early on Friday the 12th of March, my father died. Even in grief, life did not stand still. The clocks had gone forward an hour. The children, Jennifer, Janet, Andrew and Heather, still needed their schooling, feeding and looking after, and the farm work had to continue full pace while the weather lasted. Betty came and helped look after the children, and other visitors came to pass sympathies and commiserations. Bet, Fred, and Big Uncle Fred walked over from Beechcroft in the afternoon, and since the clocks had gone forward, we put the children to bed in daylight, which seemed very strange, but at least we didn't have to use our candles. Then a small thing, John Fortune, our neighbouring farmer, bought some beautiful force rhubarb, and we had that for Sunday lunch. It was pink and sweet against the sadness of the days. It's really rather lovely. They were busy hours baking tarts and sponges, fetching bacon and preparing for the gathering of family and friends. And on Wednesday the 17th, nearly 50 people came for the funeral in St Boniface Church, Hersey Road, Chandlersford. And Father was laid to rest in the cemetery on Pine Road, just opposite the end of the farm drive. The hum of quiet conversation filled Beechcroft. Hands were shaken, tears shed, flowers laid gently in place on the grave. And on that very same day, as though life itself refused silence, Lassie gave birth to 7 little tiny puppies. 5 little bitches and 2 dogs. New life arriving beside the loss. The days that followed were gentler. We went to the cemetery to see the flowers. Harry Hoskin, John's cousin, took photographs of Father's grave. Unfortunately, one night the cows broke out at Flexford and poor John had to be called back in. He was up half the night getting them back in, but it just had to be done. And lots of children came to see the puppies. They were all very excited to see the lovely little things, all squealy and just opening their eyes. Lassie is a really, really good mother. Spring moved steadily forward. Friends and family called. Betty helped with the spring cleaning, and she did our bedroom, turning it inside out very thoroughly, and moved the furniture around. But John was a bit grumpy about that. He didn't like the change. John and the men were all busy planting potatoes at Flexford opposite the Flexford yard under Knightwood. I spent some time digging out our old rose roots from the front garden with a neighbour that helped me. Jennifer, Janet and Andrew picked loads of beautiful primroses. So there were celebrations too. It was Stanley Baisley's birthday, my sister Nora's husband. And then on the 26th of March, it was my birthday, and I got loads of lovely presents. A rosebush, stockings, lipstick, boots and shining horse brushes from the children. It was a lovely day with the longer evenings, and I walked with the children round to Beechcroft, where the hair was washed and dried, as we can't do that at Hiltonbury yet with no running water. But I was able to spend the evenings writing letters and making new curtains. Then the weather turned bad after the lovely spell we'd had, with a big storm with wild March winds so strong that they broke the windows in Jennifer's bedroom. And then, one afternoon near the month's end, a moment to hold on to. Heather walked 12 whole steps across the kitchen. It was just amazing. So March of 1948 became a month of sunlight and shadow, of doors opening to spring and one door gently closing behind us, of grief carried quietly while washing was still done, seeds still planted, children still growing and puppies opening their eyes to the world. Because on a farm, in a family and in the turning of the seasons, life just goes on, softly, faithfully, one day at a time. And as March slipped gently away, the weather turned cold and restless again. Yet the house would stay full of birthdays and visitors, children's laughter, small worries, seeds being planted hopefully in the soil, and the steady, ordinary work of carrying on after loss. And so we moved into April 1948. It came in cold and wet. Though we set about it with our usual determination, Bet arrived straight away and began washing and painting in the bathroom for us, giving it a proper freshening up after the long winter. I was able to go and have my hair permed, had it curled all over, and though it felt strange at first, I decided I should quite like it once I grew accustomed to it. John went off to a meeting in Eastleigh, as he so often does, leaving the house to its usual rhythm of children, chores and weather. The rain did not let up, and it stayed bitterly cold. Bet finished the bathroom spring cleaning, and Leslie Martin came to put more glass into Jennifer's window. It was a relief after the damage that the wind had caused. John brought fish and chips home for supper that night, and that felt like a real treat. Even in the dreariest of weathers, there were always these small bright spots. But the wind and rain continued. Andrew had dreadful stomach pains one day, and it upset me to see him so uncomfortable, though by evening he seemed better. Bella and Mother came to tea, which always brought warmth to the house. We had a little worry when 2 ducks went missing, but after much looking about, first one returned and then the other, as if nothing had happened. We thought the fox might have got them, but no, they were fine and happy. The following morning it poured at first, but later brightened, and I spent most of the day cooking for Andrew's birthday party. Bet and Fred called in, and when they'd gone I managed a little reading, so when I could steal a moment. The next day dawned fine enough for washing. I had it all dry by dinner time, and then I planted my sweet peas. Hopeful little seeds that always promise more than they show at first. John went off and fetched Andrew's jeep, and then he went on to Norman Cooper, his cousin in Hursley, to talk about buying a new pedigree Jersey bull. I spent the evening cooking again, for there was much to prepare for Andrew's birthday tomorrow on the 6th. That day itself was a great success. He was thrilled to bits with his jeep, simply thrilled. And though the weather was rotten and the children did not seem to mind, there's something about children that makes them impervious to cold rain if they are happy enough. Midweek, we took the children to see tea at Inge's, while Bet worked steadily on the landing, cleaning and painting. I had a tooth stopped at Inge's because he was my dentist, which I did not enjoy at all, and I felt thoroughly fed up with it. The wind rose again. Margaret Haskell came for lunch and stayed to tea. While the children went walking, I cycled to Beechcroft. John was out drilling the hill field with barley, the steady work of spring planting carrying on regardless. Bet finished the upstairs passage and stairs, and the children were scattered here and there and everywhere. Jennifer and Janet went to Baisley's at the summer house in Eastleigh, and Andrew and Heather went with me to Mother's. Eric Inge called that evening, as people so often do, the house rarely quiet for long. Big Uncle Fred came to see us, and I presented him with one of Clara's eggs, which really pleased him. Marjorie and Malcolm West called in as well, as they often do. John went up to Hursley Masonic Lodge, and when he returned, he moved 128 chicks into the railway carriage, as there was more room for them there. Such a number of tiny lives requiring careful hands. The pups were a great attraction. Eric Inge brought Gay and Pete to see them, and John put 11 ducks under a hen. We all went to tea at Marjorie's and had a wonderful time there. Such a jolly gathering that it quite lifted the spirits. That evening, I wrote letters trying to keep in touch with everyone. There was no slowing down. Betty spring cleaned the dining room while John continued busy potato planting. We then set another broody hen down ready to sit on more goose eggs, preparing again for new life. So April moved forward, wind and rain, birthdays and visitors, spring cleaning and field work, the house full, the farm demanding, and everything stitched together by cups of tea, children's laughter, and a steady determination to keep things going. So we moved into May, puppies leaving to new homes, broody hens becoming mothers, and spring bringing new life in abundance. I hope you come back to see me next week for May 1948. Thank you for listening.